My stepdaughter, Lily, told me I was just some woman and not her real mother, laughing when I was diagnosed with a serious illness. So when she and her manipulative biological mother tried to seize the college fund I built, I let them. I just forgot to mention that the fund and the entire house they lived in was tied to a trust they never saw coming. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The sterile, off-white paint of the examination room seemed to suck all the color from the world. I sat on the edge of the paper-covered table, the crisp sheet crinkling under my hands, which I had clasped together to stop them from shaking. The doctor's words were kind, clinical, and utterly devastating. Atypical hyperplasia, he said, with a high risk of progression. We need to schedule the hysterectomy, Bethany. It's the safest path forward. I was 48. I wasn't fragile, or at least I'd never allowed myself to be. I ran my own financial planning firm, managed a team of 12, and navigated volatile markets with a steady hand. But in that moment, I felt like a house of cards, one stiff breeze away from collapse. The diagnosis wasn't just a medical issue. It was a betrayal by my own body, a sudden, terrifying vulnerability I hadn't budgeted for. I drove home in a daze, the muted colors of the suburbs blurring past my window. My husband, David, was a high school history teacher and wouldn't be home for hours. That left me with Lily, my stepdaughter. My daughter, in all the ways that counted. I had raised her since she was 6, a small, bright-eyed girl with pigtails who had hidden behind David's legs. Now she was 18, on the cusp of graduation, a young woman I had poured 12 years of my life into. I found her in the kitchen, backlit by the afternoon sun, scrolling through her phone. The tension in our home had been thick for months, ever since her biological mother, Claire, had slithered back into the picture. "Lily, can we talk for a minute?" I asked, my voice thinner than I intended. She didn't look up. "I'm busy." "Lily, please, it's important." With an exaggerated sigh, she finally raised her eyes, her expression one of pure teenage impatience. I took a deep breath, trying to find the words. I just came from the doctor. I have to have surgery, a serious one." I was looking for comfort. For a hug, maybe, for a brief, "Oh no, what's wrong?" At the very least, for her to put down the phone. Instead, a small, cold smirk played on her lips. She finally locked her phone and turned to face me, leaning against the granite countertop I'd had installed last summer. "Wow," she said, her voice dripping with a sarcasm that was new, a venom I recognized as belonging to Claire. "Is that supposed to make me feel bad for you?" I blinked, confused. "What? No, I just—" "You're always doing this," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "Always trying to make everything about you. You get a little cold, you need surgery, you need everyone to stop and feel sorry for you." "Lily, this isn't a cold," I said, my own voice rising in disbelief. It's serious, I'm scared." And then she said it, the words that sliced through me more cleanly than any surgeon's scalpel ever could. She looked me dead in the eye, her expression flat and devoid of any of the warmth we'd shared for over a decade. "Why would I be scared? You're not my real mother. You're just some woman my dad married." The air left my lungs. The kitchen, my beautiful, sun-drenched kitchen, suddenly felt like a tomb. She held my gaze for a moment longer, a flicker of something, triumph, in her eyes before grabbing her bag. "I'm going to Mom's," she said, shouldering the strap. "Claire's," she corrected, as if to twist the knife. "She's taking me shopping for my dorm." She walked out. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing in the sudden, crushing silence. I was left standing alone, a financial planner who could account for every penny, suddenly facing a deficit of the heart so profound I couldn't breathe. I hadn't cried at the doctor's office. I hadn't cried on the drive home, but I sank to the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets, and I wept. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The 2 weeks between that day and my surgery were a blur of pre-op appointments, blood work, and a fog of anxiety. David, my husband, was a rock, but a soft, porous rock. He was kind, gentle, and utterly useless in a confrontation. When I told him what Lily had said, his face crumpled. "Oh, bait, honey. She didn't mean it," he murmured, pulling me into a hug. "She's just, you know how Claire gets in her head, she's just lashing out." "She meant it, David," I said, my voice muffled against his flannel shirt. She looked right at me. Ray was nothing but contempt in her eyes. "I'll talk to her," he promised, as he always did. And I knew he would. He would have a gentle, meandering conversation with Lily, in which she would likely grunt noncommittal answers, and he would emerge believing the problem was solved. He was a good man, but he confused talking with resolving. He was terrified of upsetting Lily, terrified she would pull away from him the way her mother had. This left me to navigate the emotional minefield alone. The night before my surgery, David was at a late-night school board meeting. I was in my study, finalizing my medical directive and making sure my partner at the firm, Jessica, had access to all my client files. My hands were shaking. I was trying to focus on interest rates and beneficiary forms, but my mind kept drifting to the empty room down the hall. Lily hadn't spoken a word to me since our confrontation. She was staying at Claire's, a decision David had weakly protested and then allowed. My phone rang. It was Lily. A flicker of hope, stupid and stubborn, lit in my chest. Maybe she'd called to wish me luck. "Hello." "Hey," she said, her voice clipped. "I need you to transfer $300 to my account." Not "how are you," not "are you scared." I closed my eyes. What for Lily? God, why do you always have to ask? Mom and I are going out for my graduation dinner tonight. A real celebration. She's taking me to the Clifton. The Clifton, the most expensive restaurant in the city, the kind of place Claire would go to on someone else's dime. "Lily, your graduation isn't for another week, and I'm having major surgery in the morning." I heard her huff. "So? It's not like you're dying. Claire says you're probably just getting a tummy tuck and calling it something scary to get attention." The cruelty of it knocked the wind out of me. That is a monstrous thing to say, Lily, and it's not true." "Whatever," she spat. "Are you sending the money or not? I need it." "No," I said, my voice hardening. "No, I'm not." "Fine, I'll just ask Dad. He's not cheap like you." "Ask him then," I said, and a cold resolve began to settle over the hurt. It was a familiar feeling. It was the same feeling I got when a client's portfolio was under attack. It was the moment the panic subsided and the strategy began. "You know," she added, her voice turning venomous, "Mom was right about you. You use money to control everyone. You think because you paid for everything you own me. But you don't. I'm not your daughter." "You're right, Lily," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You're not. You've made that perfectly clear." I hung up the phone. My hand was steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. I sat there for a long moment, the numbers on my computer screen blurring. They thought I was just a wallet. Claire with her vapid charm and Lily with her borrowed cruelty. They saw me as an obstacle, a resource to be drained, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just some woman. I was the woman who built the entire foundation they were standing on. And a foundation, I thought, could be moved. My surgery and recovery were hell. David was attentive but distracted, his mind clearly torn between his wife in the hospital bed and his daughter who was refusing to visit. He'd hover by my bedside, wringing his hands. "Lily said she has finals. She said she's just really stressed. She sent her. Well, she said she'd send a card." No card ever came. It was during those long, painful days, doped up on medication, that I had too much time to think. I thought about the first time I met Lily. She was 6. David and I had been dating for a year. He was a nervous wreck, so desperate for me to like her. I'd brought a book about a dragon who loves to bake. She had giggled, her tiny hand gripping mine as we read. I thought about the years I'd poured into her. I taught her how to ride a bike when David was too nervous she'd fall. I sat with her at the kitchen table, painstakingly going over algebra homework until she finally got it and her face lit up. I was the one who planned her half-birthday parties because her real birthday fell near Christmas. I was the one who held her when her first boyfriend broke her heart. I had, quite literally, planned her entire future. 16 years ago, when David and I got married, I was already a successful financial planner. He was a teacher with a modest salary and a mountain of debt from his divorce. I had insisted on a prenuptial agreement, a practical-minded decision that David found slightly unromantic but agreed to. More importantly, when we bought our house, I put the 20% down payment from my own pre-marriage savings. The house was put into the Bethany M. Hayes Revocable Trust. David was a beneficiary but not the trustee. I was. Then, 10 years ago, I established a separate educational trust for Lily. I had funded it myself. A disciplined, automatic transfer every single month. It was my gift to her, my promise that she would start her adult life debt-free. It was now worth well over $250,000. Claire, the antagonist in this drama, had been a ghost for most of those years. She was a woman who lived in a perpetual state of almost. She was almost an actress, almost a real estate agent, almost an influencer. In reality, she was a professional leech, flitting from one man to the next, leaving a trail of unpaid bills and broken promises. David paid his child support dutifully, but Claire rarely used it for Lily, preferring to spend it on spa days and trips she'd post about on social media. She de-resurfaced about a year ago, right around the time Lily started looking at colleges. Suddenly, Claire was Mom of the Year. She'd show up in a flashy, leased convertible, all big sunglasses and fake laughter, taking Lily for girls' days that always seemed to end with Lily returning with a new, expensive purse and a fresh dose of resentment for our boring life. I'd tried to warn David. She's not just making up for lost time, David, I'd argued. She's timing this. She smells money. She knows college applications are happening. You're not being fair, Bate, he'd said, running a hand through his thinning hair. She's still Lily's mother. Can't you be happy they're connecting? But I saw Claire for what she was. I'd seen her at a school event, her eyes darting around, her smile bright and plastic. She'd cornered me by the bake sale table. Bethany, darling, she'd gushed, air-kissing the space near my cheek. You've done a marvelous job with the house, and little Lily, she's just blossoming. She's a wonderful girl, I'd said stiffly. Oh, absolutely, and so smart. She's got her heart set on Yale, you know. Her eyes had glinted. Thank God you're so good with finances. I'm just a creative, you know. Numbers melt my brain. It's such a relief to know you've got her college all taken care of. David says you set up some thing for her. The thing for her, not for Lily, for her. Her casual, inappropriate interest in my assets was a blaring air horn. She wasn't just influencing Lily, she was positioning herself. She was laying the groundwork to take credit for the future I had built. And now, with me vulnerable and Lily apparently on her side, she was making her move. I came home from the hospital to an empty house. David was at work, and Lily was, well, I didn't know where Lily was. A small, spiteful part of me was grateful for the quiet. The larger, wounded part just felt hollow. The turning point came a week later. I was propped up on the sofa, buried in pillows, and sorting through a mountain of medical bills when the mail arrived. Tucked between a get-well-soon card from my firm and a prescription notice was a thick, glossy brochure from Yale University. And on top of it, a letter. It was a bill. Not from Yale, but from Claire Davies Consulting, LLC. My blood pressure, already high from the painkillers, spiked. I ripped open the envelope. It was an invoice, professionally printed on heavy cardstock, for $15,000. The line items read: College application strategy and essay consultation, $10,000. Student emotional support and lifestyle coaching, $5,000. Payable to Claire Davies. I stared at it, my vision blurring. This was audacious. It was fraud. It was so brazenly, unbelievably Claire. She was billing me for consulting my own stepdaughter. She was trying to skim money directly off the top before the real tuition bills even arrived. I was supposed to be resting. I was supposed to be healing. Instead, I felt a surge of adrenaline so potent it nearly lifted me off the couch. The fog of pain and self-pity evaporated. The victim disappeared, and the financial planner took her place. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "Okay, Claire, you want to talk finances? Let's talk finances." I picked up my phone. My first call was not to David. It was to my lawyer, Ken. "Ken," I said, my voice crisp, "I need you to do a deep dive on a Claire Davies Consulting, LLC. I want to know when it was formed, where it's registered, and if it's ever had a single legitimate client." My second call was to a private investigator I'd used once before on behalf of a client who suspected her business partner was embezzling. "Robert," I said, "I have a job for you. Name is Claire Davies. I want to know everything. Credit report, rental agreements, any outstanding warrants who she associates with. I want to know what she ate for breakfast. I'm texting you her photo and last known address." My final call was to my partner at the firm, Jessica. "Jess, I need you to do something for me. I need you to pull the trust documents for the Bethany M. Hayes Revocable Trust and the Lily Hayes Walker Educational Trust. I'm going to be making some amendments." The clever trap, as it were, wasn't a trap at all. It was juice. The truth, a truth I had conveniently never advertised. The educational trust for Lily was my asset under my sole control. I had always intended to sign it over to her or simply pay the bills from it directly, but I wasn't legally obligated to. The signature on those checks was mine and mine alone. And the house, David and Lily and presumably Claire, were all operating under the assumption that it was our house. They had forgotten that I had bought it, that it was in my trust. David was a beneficiary after my death. While I was alive, he was, in the cold, hard language of the law, a guest. For 12 years, I had been the generous, quiet provider. I had let David feel like an equal partner, even though I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the car payments, and for every summer camp and orthodontist visit. I had done it out of love. Now I would use that same structure, not for love, but for leverage. "This isn't revenge," I told myself as I hung up the phone, the invoice from Claire still sitting on my lap. "This is a market correction." The investigation bore fruit faster than I could have imagined. Robert, the pie, was worth every penny. It turned out Claire Davies Consulting, LLC, was registered 3 weeks ago to a P.O. box. It had no clients, no follow-through, no website, and no purpose other than to be a vessel for this fraudulent invoice. Even better or worse, depending on your perspective, Claire wasn't just a bad influence. She was a con artist. She had a string of judgments against her in 2 different states for unpaid rent. She was currently driving a car leased in the name of a man she dated for 6 weeks last year, who was now suing her. And, the piece de resistance, she had a small, outstanding warrant in an adjacent county for skipping out on a $4,000 bill from a cosmetic surgeon. My lawyer, Ken, was practically giddy. "Bethany, this isn't just a family dispute. This is mail fraud. What she's doing is a crime." I sat with this information for 2 days, letting it settle. I waited for the perfect moment. It came on a Sunday evening. David had finally convinced Lily to come home for dinner, a peace summit, he'd called it. I knew she was only there because her application fee for Yale, the first-year deposit, was due. I set the table. I made the lasagna Lily used to call her favorite. The 3 of us sat down in a silence so thick I could barely breathe. "So," David said, forcing a smile, "Lily, your graduation is just around the corner. Exciting." Lily just shrugged, pushing a noodle around her plate. "Yeah, it's fine." "We need to talk about the Yale deposit, Bethany," Lily said, cutting right to the chase. She didn't even look at me, addressing a point on the wall just over my shoulder. "It's due on the 1st, and it's $2,500. And Mom, Claire, sent you her invoice, so you need to pay that too, so we can keep working on my essays for scholarships." David's head snapped toward me. "Invoice? What invoice?" I calmly placed my fork down. I reached for the folder I had placed on the sideboard. "I'm glad you brought that up, Lily," I said, my voice even. I slid the invoice across the table. David grabbed it, his eyes widening in horror as he read. $15,000, he choked out. What in God's name is this? It's her bill, Lily said, her voice full of defiance. She's been working with me for months. Has she? I asked, my voice still quiet. I leaned forward. Or did she just register her company 3 weeks ago at a P.O. box? Lily's eyes widened. What? I'm a financial planner, Lily. I live in a world of documents and due diligence, so I did mine. I pulled out the next sheet of paper and slid it across. This is the business registration for Claire Davies Consulting, filed on April 27th. Funny, since she's claiming to have done $10,000 worth of work in March. Lily stared at the paper, her bravado faltering. You're lying, you're trying to trick me. Am I? I slid the next one. This is a copy of a judgment against her from a landlord in Tempe, Arizona, for $12,000 in unpaid rent. And this, I said, pulling out the last one, is a copy of an active bench warrant for her arrest from 2 towns over. It seems she doesn't believe in paying her plastic surgeon either. Lily's face had gone pale. She was shaking her head, looking from the papers to me. No, she explained all that. Those people were out to get her. She's a good person. A good person who sent a fraudulent invoice to a woman recovering from cancer surgery. I snapped, the control I'd been holding finally breaking. A good person who convinced you to tell me I was just some woman so she could get her hands on your college fund. What are you talking about? David whispered, looking at me. Ask her, I said, gesturing to Lily. Go on, tell him what you said to me in the kitchen. Tell him about the phone call the night before my surgery. Tell him about Claire's tummy tuck theory. Lily burst into tears, a genuine, childish sob. She said you were trying to control me. She said you were using your money to keep me from her, and that you'd try to turn me against her. And look at that, I said, my voice flat. She was right. Here I am, turning you against her. But here's the difference, Lily. She did it with lies. I'm doing it with facts. These are legal documents. This isn't my opinion. This is her reality. Lily shoved her chair back, sobbing. I hate you. You've ruined everything. She ran from the room, and a moment later, the front door slammed. David just sat there, his face in his hands, staring at the warrant for his ex-wife's arrest. The confrontation was over, but I knew the war wasn't. Claire was a cornered animal, and she was about to get desperate. The following week was a new kind of awful. Lily was back at Claire's, and the two of them had clearly entered a new phase of their alliance, full-scale assault. My phone was bombarded with texts from Lily, alternating between tearful pleas, "How could you do this to Mom? You're tearing our family apart," and venomous rants that were pure Claire in their phrasing, "You're a bitter, dried-up old woman, and you're just jealous no one will ever love you." Then came the calls from David's family. His sister, Karen, who I'd always liked, called me, her voice tight with disapproval. "Bethany, I don't know what's going on, but David is a mess and Lily is heartbroken. Claire says you're trying too. Seize Lily's college money? I thought you loved that girl." Claire was spinning the narrative, painting me as the evil, wealthy stepmother, a modern-day Cinderella villain, locking away the poor, deserving child's future. It was brilliant. It was insidious. And David, my conflict avoidant, can't we all just get along, husband, was crumbling. "Bait just, pay the Yale deposit," he begged me one night. He looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed. "Just this one. We can sort out the rest later. It's for Lily." "It's not for Lily," I said, my voice firm as I stirred my tea. I was back at work part-time, and the structure was helping me heal. "It's for Claire. Every dollar I send to Yale right now is a victory for Claire. It's proof that her tactics work. It's a green light for her to keep bleeding us and Lily dry." "But she'll lose her spot. Is that what you want?" "What I want, David, is for you to stop acting like a guest in this marriage. What I want is for you to be a father and a husband, not a referee. Your ex-wife is committing fraud. Your daughter is being manipulated. And you are asking me to reward them for it." He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. "That's not fair." "No," I agreed, "it's not." The final piece of the puzzle came from Robert, the pie, 2 days later. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "I was tracking the car your subject is driving, the one the ex-boyfriend is suing her for. She's not just driving it, she's trying to sell it. To a cash for cars lot known for not asking questions about paperwork. She's trying to sell a car that isn't hers," I said, my mind racing. "Bingo, and I got something else. I was watching her. She met with a man at a coffee shop. I got a picture. Ran him through a facial rec database. He's a credit repair specialist. A loan shark, basically. The kind who helps you set up fake identities to get new loans." Claire wasn't just trying to skim $15,000. She was planning to loot the entire $250,000 education trust. The consulting and the Yale deposit were just tests to see how easily the tap would open. Her real plan was to get that money, likely convince Lily to defer college for a gap year, and then disappear, leaving Lily with nothing and us holding the bag. I now had irrefutable proof of a conspiracy to commit fraud, active theft, and associations with known criminals. It was time for the second confrontation. This one wouldn't be at my dinner table. I called Lily. "I'm not calling to fight," I said, cutting her off before she could start. "I've paid the $2,500 deposit for Yale." There was a stunned silence. "You did?" "Yes, and I'm willing to pay the invoice from your mother, but I will not do it through the mail. This is a business transaction, so we will handle it as one. I will be at my office tomorrow at 10:00 a.m. You and Claire can come by, she can sign a receipt of payment, and I will give her a certified check for the $15,000. I could hear her muffled voice talking to Claire in the background. She's paying. Lily came back on the line, her voice triumphant. "Okay, we'll be there." "Good," I said. "And Lily, bring your Yale acceptance paperwork. We'll need to go to the bank together right after to wire the full first-year tuition. I want this all settled tomorrow." I hung up. David, who had been listening, stared at me. "Bethany, what are you doing? You're giving in. Put on your good S." "You it, David," I said, turning back to my laptop. "You're coming with me. Oh, and so is Ken, my lawyer." My office was on the 14th floor of a glass and steel building downtown. It was a space I'd designed to be calming and impressive, all cool grays, warm woods, and a sweeping view of the city. When Claire and Lily arrived at 10:00 a.m. on the dot, they were practically vibrating with smug victory. Claire was in full costume, a white power suit, heels that were too high for 10:00 a.m., and oversized sunglasses she didn't remove. Lily was beside her, dressed in her new rich girl uniform, carrying a designer bag I'd never seen before. "Bethany, darling," Claire purred, walking into the conference room as if she owned it. "Love what you've done with the place. So, corporate." "Claire, Lily, please sit." They took seats at the long, polished mahogany table. On my side sat me, David looking pale and terrified, and my lawyer, Ken, who was shuffling papers with a benign smile. "So," Claire said, leaning forward all business, "you have the check." "I do," I said. I slid a bank-certified check for $15,000 across the table. Claire's hand darted out and snatched it, her eyes gleaming. She inspected it for a moment, then tucked it into her purse. "Wonderful. Now, as for the tuition." "Ah," I said, holding up a hand. "Before we get to that, there is the matter of the receipt. Ken." Ken slid a single piece of paper across the table. "This is just a standard payment received form, Ms. Davies," he said smoothly. "It states that you have received $15,000 for services rendered, as itemized on your invoice, and that this payment fully and completely settles the matter." Claire, high on her win, barely glanced at it. She grabbed a pen from the holder and signed her name with a flourish. "There, all done." "Excellent," I said. I took the signed receipt and handed it to Ken, who placed it neatly in his briefcase. "Now," I said, leaning forward, "about that tuition." I pressed a small button on the desk speakerphone. "Robert, are you there?" "I am, Miss Hayes," a man's voice replied. Claire's smile froze. "Who is that?" That, I said, is Robert. He's a private investigator. He's been following you for 2 weeks, Claire. Claire's face went from smug to ashen in a millisecond. I'm leaving. She stood up. I wouldn't, Ken said, his voice no longer benign. Because the moment you signed that receipt for $15,000, you admitted to being the sole proprietor of a consulting business. A business that just accepted payment for a fraudulent invoice. That, Ms. Davies, is a felony. It's called mail fraud. Lily looked at me, then her mother, her eyes wide with panic. Mom, what is he talking about? She's lying, they're all lying. Claire shrieked, her facade cracking. Am I? I slid the photos across the table. Is this you, Claire, meeting with a man named Slider Pete, a known loan shark? Is this you at the Cash for Clunkers lot in Stockton, trying to sell a car that doesn't belong to you? A car that Mr. Alan Henderson is currently suing you to get back. David finally spoke. You're a criminal. And then, I said, there's the warrant. I nodded to Ken. He picked up his phone. Officer Mendez, we're ready for you. Officer, Lily whispered, her voice trembling. The conference room door opened, and 2 uniformed police officers walked in. Claire let out a sound I had never heard a human make, a high-pitched shriek of pure, animal panic. You called the cops? You crazy witch. You called the cops on me. No, I said, standing up. I just provided a citizen's tip as to the whereabouts of a wanted fugitive. Officer, that woman is Claire Davies. She has an outstanding warrant in Polk County. The officers approached the table. Ma'am, are you Claire Davies? Claire was hyperventilating, looking from me to the officers. She tried to bolt, but the second officer blocked the door. It was over in seconds. They cuffed her, her hands behind the back of her white power suit. You'll pay for this, Bethany, she screamed as they let her out. You'll never see Lily again. The door clicked shut, cutting her off. Silence descended. Lily was frozen in her chair, tears streaming silently down her face, staring at the empty doorway. I sat down and pushed a box of tissues toward her. She flinched. Lily, I said, my voice soft now. Your mother is a con artist. She was never going to take you to Yale. She was going to take your college money and run. She was using you just like she uses everyone. Lily just shook, her sobs racking her body. Finally, David moved. He got up, walked around the table, and knelt in front of his daughter. Lily, honey, it's okay. He looked at me, his eyes full of a desperation and a shame I had been waiting 12 years to see. We're going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. Lily finally looked up, her mascara-streaked face a mask of utter devastation. She looked at her father, then at me. And in that moment, she finally made her choice. She lunged forward out of her chair and collapsed into her father's arms, wailing, Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Claire's downfall was swift and absolute. The outstanding warrant was just the beginning. The fraud charges from the invoice, combined with the evidence Robert had gathered about the car and the loan shark, were more than enough for the DA to pursue a case. The man whose car she'd stolen pressed charges. The cosmetic surgeon, upon hearing she'd been arrested, refiled his civil suit. Claire was buried in legal trouble, and with no money and no one to con, she had no way out. She took a plea deal that included jail time and a long probation. With court-mandated restitution, I knew I would never see. The days after the arrest were quiet and raw. Lily stayed in her room, emerging only for meals, where she would eat in silence, her eyes fixed on her plate. David was adrift, caught between his guilt over Claire and his shame at how he'd failed both me and his daughter. The college questions still hung in the air. The Yale tuition was not paid. The deposit I claimed to have paid was a lie, a necessary part of the trap. A week after the arrest, I came home from work to find Lily sitting at the kitchen table, the same spot where she had delivered her devastating words. She had a laptop open. I can't go to Yale, she said, not looking at me. I looked it up without your money. There's no way. No, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. And Dad, he can't co-sign a loan. His credit is not good. I know, I said. She finally looked up, her face pale and swollen. I'm so sorry, Bethany. What I said to you, it was the meanest thing I've ever done. And I didn't mean it. I was just so angry, and she made it feel good to be angry at you. I sat down opposite her. I know, she saw the one person who's always been there for you, the one person who's stable and reliable, and she taught you to see that as boring and controlling. That's what manipulators do, Lily. They isolate you. We sat in silence, then I pulled my own laptop from my bag. The educational trust I built for you is still here, I said, turning the screen toward her. The money is all there, I never touched it. Her eyes filled with tears again, but after what I did, why would you? Because you're not your mother, Lily. You're 18. You made a terrible, awful, hurtful mistake. Your mother is 49 and she's made a life of it. I'm betting on the fact that you can learn from this. I clicked a few buttons, but you're not going to Yale. Her face fell. You're going to state, I said firmly. You're going to stay home for the first year, go to community college and get a part-time job. You're going to contribute to this household. You're going to come with me to therapy, and you're going to have dinner with your father and me every night. And if, after 1 year, you've proven you're serious about your future and about being a part of this family, that trust will pay for you to transfer to any school you want. It was, I realized, the most important financial plan I had ever created. Lily just stared at me. She wasn't angry. She wasn't defiant. She just nodded, a look of profound, bone-deep relief on her face. For the first time, she was being given not just money, but boundaries. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Bate, she paused. Okay, Mom. It took a long time. David and I started counseling, and he began the hard work of finding his backbone. Lily got a job as a barista and was surprisingly good at it. She and I went to therapy, and it was ugly and hard, and we both cried a lot. But we went. A year later, I was driving a U-Haul to the dorms at the State University, 2 hours away. Lily was following behind in her used car, which she'd bought with her own money. The trust was paying her tuition. She was a different person. Quieter, more thoughtful, and fiercely protective of her father and me. As we unpacked her boxes, I found a small, framed photo. It was from years ago at one of her half-birthday parties. I was in the background, out of focus, holding a cake. Lily was in the front, grinning, her 2 front teeth missing. I forgot about this, I said, smiling. I didn't, she said, taking it from me. I was just telling my roommate. This is my mom, Bethany. She's a financial planner. She's the smartest person I know. She gave me a hug, tight and real. Standing in that tiny, cinder-block dorm room, I finally felt it. The accounts were balanced. The investment had matured. I was at peace.